السلام عليكم يا جماعة وحياكم الله. اليوم عندنا مقابلة ثانية مع ضيف جدا مميز وعنده خبرة كبيرة بمجال العملات الرقمية واللي هو أدام ستوكس. راح نتكلم معاه بهذه الحلقة عن نظرته العامة تجاه العملات الرقمية، وين متجهين بالفترة القادمة، وأيضا بعض من المواضيع الثانية والظروف الاقتصادية والعديد من المحاور المهمة. فأتمنى أن الحلقة هذه تعجبكم. خلونا نبلش. Hello and welcome, Adam. Welcome to the channel. I appreciate having you on. How are you doing, man?
Mohamed, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. Good to see you.
That's great to see you too. So let's start by just talking in general about the current state of the market. So we've seen this big move happen in the past month, and we've seen Bitcoin just like go from 68,000 till almost 100,000 it reached a couple of days ago. So if you would just like give us a brief explanation of what the current market condition is in terms of the overall crypto market that we've seen recently.
Yeah, isn't it exciting? Everyone's very anxious to see when we will cross the $100,000 mark for Bitcoin. I foresee that will be happening within the next 30 days. What's very good is that we can see over time that we've had 4-year cycles, but these 4-year cycles have predominantly been for retail investors. Then we went to institutional investors, which bought lots more money come in. But now, of course, it's really about the nation states coming in, with the United States potentially having Bitcoin on their strategic reserves. I would suggest other nations are looking at having Bitcoin in their reserves as well, even if it's just a little bit. At the individual level, we like it to buy low and sell high and perhaps break away from the old broken money of fiat and the US dollar and all other fiats around the world. When we make these big returns, we actually understand that there's more to crypto than meets the eye. I think Bitcoin is the center of gravity for giving the crypto markets a direction in which way we're going. But now that we're getting a lot of confidence in the markets, with governments getting on side with this, with the development of this technology going more than 15 years, we can at least know that there is a lot more certainty in these markets. When I started in crypto 10 years ago, we were not even sure if Bitcoin would survive day by day. Well, now we can see that technologically it will survive, legally it will survive, and institutionally it's getting even bigger. As Bitcoin has marked its place with huge dominance at the moment, nearly 60% of all the money in crypto is in Bitcoin. We're now going to see shortly some of that money or dominance slip into the altcoin markets. That doesn't mean that Bitcoin is getting smaller. It means that there's a lot more money coming into the crypto markets. We expect to see that Bitcoin dominance drop from 60%, where it is at the moment, typically to around 30%. This isn't sure, but in any case, what it shows is that there's a lot of money coming into these markets. As we cross $2, then $3 trillion, hopefully to $4 and $5 trillion, there are so many opportunities at the retail, institutional, and state level that the markets are looking very good. I'm very confident, and I can't wait for the next year ahead.
Yeah, it's really an exciting time to be in this space and see all of these big things that people talked about actually happen, which a lot of people did not believe, a lot of people did not imagine. Some people even said that these things or agreed with it, but they still couldn't imagine how that would look like for nation states to adopt, for big institutions to get into this space. It's really exciting to be in this space now. And you've mentioned that you've been in this space for a long time. So I wanted to ask you just at what point in this time that you've been in this market, or since you've got into crypto, did you realize or think that, yes, this is really big? And because early on, even some people participated. I personally had some experience with crypto in 2016, 2017, but at that time I didn't really think of it too seriously. So my question to you is from your experience and what you've been through in this market, at what point did you see this thing where it clicked and everything made sense for you in terms of this, the future of this space?
That's a very powerful question, because the reality is when I first came into crypto, it was all about, to be blunt, making money. So I was fascinated with mining. My journey started with a lot of Bitcoin mining. I was even mining Dash and Litecoin and Siacoin. I had a big mining farm, and I think as a matter of financial returns, it would have been better if I didn't do mining and I simply just bought Bitcoin and held it. That would have been easier, it would have been cheaper, and it would have made me a lot more money. But I don't regret mining because it basically made me an expert in proof of work, understanding how these systems work, how much energy is involved, how different chains operate. And then it led onto the journey of making more money in these markets, primarily buying low than selling high. But then you got into staking and NFTs and farming and yield rewards. And there's so many different ways to make money. But the saying that we have on the channel, Mohammed, is that we come for the Lamborghini, but we stay for the revolution. That is, most of us get into crypto to, let's face it, get rich, to make a lot of money. And these markets prove that it's relatively simple compared to other markets, provided you stick to the rules, to make a lot of money in a very short time. However, you've asked the right question. What about the 4 or 5 year mark? I realized, hang on, this is much bigger than simply speculation. It's much bigger than investing. It's much bigger than just making some money. It's in fact a milestone, a turning point for all of humanity. For all of humanity, no matter what nation, no matter what language, no matter what religion, we need a good, hard, sound, neutral, open, borderless, censorship money. And the first and best money that meets all of these parameters is in fact Bitcoin. We can see over history that we tried with gold. In fact, we go further back, we had feathers and beads and shells and stones and diamonds and silver and gold and banknotes. And all of these monies had problems with them, primarily centralization and dilution. That is, if we look at gold as an example, when we had gold, we had governments from around the world clipping little bits of gold, taxing that gold. Then we had governments and individuals diluting that gold by melting it down and mixing it with lead or other metals. Then when we went into the banking system, we put gold into centralized vaults, centralized bodies, whether it was a goldsmith, a bank, a vault, or some type of dealer that would issue a banknote in return for holding that gold. Well, of course, these goldsmiths, these banks, they realized that no one was ever collecting the gold. Therefore, they issued more and more banknotes against the same piece of gold, which in essence is diluting or debasing that gold. Or in other words, it's creating inflation. It's diluting the purchasing power of that money. Well, we can see throughout the financial timeline in 1971, we had a disconnect between gold and money altogether when the United States government, under President Nixon at the time, said, I'm temporarily delinking gold from the United States dollar. Well, of course, that never was a temporary statement. That is, more than half a century later, they've never linked gold to money again. Gold still has value, but it doesn't work as a currency. It doesn't work as a currency because it's slow, it's heavy, it's cumbersome. You need to weigh it, you need to purify it, you need to store it, you need to move it. And all of that costs a lot of money and energy. So then we went to the banknote. Well, the banknote came with its problems because of the double spend. For the one piece of gold, they printed multiple notes against that one piece of gold. And then when they delinked the gold from the money standard altogether, for central banks and for governments, it was just a free-for-all. It was a free-for-all where centralized bodies from any nationality, from any country, from any religion, they realized, hang on, we can just print this money and the people will just accept it. Well, we can see over history, all fiats, this system that we're talking about now is fiat, where by decree, money is just created out of thin air and the people have to deal with it. Well, all fiats always fail. So humanity, all of us everywhere, have been looking for a hard, scarce, open, immutable, neutral money that everyone can be part of, everyone can use, but no one can control. I don't trust you, you don't trust me, we don't trust them, and they don't trust us. So we need a trustless money. And this is the first time in humanity, my friend, that we've actually had a legitimate trustless money. It's taken 15 years since the inception of Bitcoin to get to where we are right now, but it's actually taken millennia, perhaps even further, of humankind to realize money is in fact an important part of storing and moving energy and value between one individual or one tribe or one nation with a we need a system that is fair and sound and trustless. That is, we don't need to put a trust in a centralized body. Many people didn't realize this until Bitcoin came along. That is, many people around the world, they had financial illiteracy. They didn't actually know what money was. So to answer your question, the turning point for me was when I realized what the scam of the US dollar and all dollars and all fiats around the world, when I realized what that scam was, that was the turning point for me. It took about 4 years of being into crypto. And I'm a little embarrassed to say this, Mohammed, because one of my degrees is in economics. So I have formal qualifications in understanding the financial system. And I admit this to the world to say, well, if someone with a formal qualification in economics didn't truly understand the financial system until he got into Bitcoin, then it's understandable why so many people around the world are financially illiterate. It's also understandable why so many people get almost defensive or angry when they learn about Bitcoin. But once they get it, Bitcoin won't be changed by the individual, but rather Bitcoin will change the individual's paradigm to understand this is the fairest money we have. Therefore, we should support it. Now, if the consequence of supporting Bitcoin is that we get rich in the process, hey, so be it. But that's not why we stay. We come for the Lamborghini, but we stay for the revolution.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you mentioned around just understanding why you're here, for even like people that are recently getting into this space and they are currently just in for the Lamborghini. It's important to remember the main thing of like why this whole space was invented, what's the goal of like crypto in general, what kind of problem does it solve, and mainly, like you mentioned, it's the money aspect, where there hasn't been yet a form of money that has really been able to withstand time, to withstand some of the issues and criticism that have come before when it came to the other options that they've been trying so far. And I think it's still like it's gonna take a lot more time. From my experience, the amount of people that truly understand the things that you mentioned is still very, very small, but it's a growing population of people that are getting to understand these things. So yeah, I think like that's awesome. That's a great explanation and place to start. We'll go back a little bit now to crypto and maybe talk about some other things. Like this is your channel, which we discussed earlier, and I told you that I was like really watching most of your shows in the bear market. It helped me get through that period, and it's really awesome. And I wanted to ask you about the Bitcoin cycle, because I know in your stream sometimes you say how there's only been 3 data points for when it comes to the Bitcoin cycle, and that I didn't fully get where your exact position on whether you believe in it or not, whether you see that it's a thing that you can rely on a little bit to a certain extent. Like there's nothing that's 100% for sure in terms of any tool that you might use. But to a certain extent, so far, even in this cycle, we've been seeing how the Bitcoin cycle has been playing out in a pretty accurate way so far. So I wanted to take your take on that.
Yeah, so it's interesting, isn't it? Because we can see that every 4 years, or essentially every 210,000 blocks, we have the halving. And we can see that there is absolutely an established pattern that typically after the halving, we go to a new all-time high and the rest of the market runs away. Where it's dangerous, and I'm very honored that you'd pick up that questioning I have of the 4-year cycle, because with only 3 data points, arguably even less, because when we take away the first 1 or 2, the first data point of the first halving doesn't really count because the market was so small. But the second data point, it was still evolving. Well, when we get to the third and fourth data points, it's kind of a little different now that we've got institutions and nation states coming into this game. So I can't ignore the reality of the 4-year cycle. The 4-year cycle is that it goes all the way up and then goes all the way down, and then it repeats that every 4 years. And it's kind of like the 4 seasons of our life and of the weather that we're facing at the moment. So we're moving into the crypto spring, and we're about to hit the crypto summer. And during that crypto summer, that's when things get crazy. What I question, Mohammed, is what would possibly happen during this cycle if nation states are buying this, not just you and me, not just companies, but governments and banks. When governments are buying this and stockpiling it, and they realize that they can print their worthless fiat, unlimited money for very scarce and valuable Bitcoin, perhaps there's going to be a massive run on the price of Bitcoin. That is, we're so focused on the 4-year cycle. Maybe this time it's going to be a super cycle. And some people talk about this super cycle where it could, in fact, go parabolic, where we see potentially that the cycle will run away and keep going up and to the right. I know I don't know. I just know that what's very dangerous is sometimes we get so accustomed to what's happened in the past, we throw all of our money in a long or a short position, expecting the market to repeat itself. And that can be very dangerous in investing. However, in saying that, I'm only one person of the market. And ultimately, the market is made up of people. People are made up of emotions. Those emotions lead to actions, and that action is ultimately a buy or a sell. So if the entire market believes in the 4-year cycle, then the entire market will probably react accordingly. So perhaps this 4-year cycle is locked in forever, or perhaps this time it goes ballistic and we have what's called perhaps a banana zone or a parabolic run, where it's just up and to the right forever. I'm hoping that the 4-year cycle holds, because then it gives us a time to predictability, some predictability of positioning ourselves in the crypto winter, selling off some of those altcoins and other assets in the crypto summer, and then repeating the process over the 4 years. But of course, what we can see is that 4 years is a long time in crypto time. That is, 4 years, it gets pretty boring and it gets pretty drawn out. And you can see that I've been running the show consistently over the crypto winters, and the views go down, the subs go down, the comments go down. But when the market heats up, as it is at the moment, and I'm sure you're experiencing on your channel as well, the views go up, the subs go up, the comments go up, the interest goes up. If we maintain this momentum, maybe we'll break the 4-year cycle, or maybe we'll just revert to everything that you can see on that chart.
Yeah. I think like the important thing that you mentioned, what I understood is that so far the 4-year cycle has been based on a certain amount of, let's say, market dynamics and market conditions. If the entire market condition, participants, who's buying, who's getting in changes, then that might change the dynamic or the way that the 4-year cycle plays out. Because what is it based on? It's based on the people, participants of the market, and they are the ones who are buying and selling. So if we get an influx or a large, big buyers coming in, they can just break it if they want. Ultimately.
Yeah, very well said. Absolutely. Because let's face it, in those cycles that you're looking at on the screen now, they were retail investors, only retail investors. That means like people like you, me, brothers, sisters, mums, dads, buying these coin and then dumping it as the market pulls back. Well, let's do a little thought experiment. If Bitcoin is becoming the digital gold, would we see nation states who hold huge piles of gold? Let's think of the United States as an example. They've got massive reserves of gold in Fort Knox. And we could go to Russia, we could go to China, we could go to any nation that's got huge reserves of gold. They're not selling that gold every 4 years. They're not selling it every 10 years. Now, there are some movements, and certainly there's some cycles within the gold markets. All markets move in cycles. That's no doubt whatsoever. But the dramatic moves of those markets are nowhere near what Bitcoin is. So my question is to myself and to the market is, if we're so accustomed to the 4-year cycle, and as you said, the right word is the dynamics, have they now changed? Because if banks and governments buy Bitcoin, the digital gold, would they really sell it at the end of the 4-year cycle? I just can't see that happening. And now also, because so many people like myself and Michael Saylor and all these big investors in Bitcoin, because they have so much confidence in Bitcoin, they're not selling. So there'll always be sellers, particularly if the price is right. But there'll also be hodlers, people who hold this thing with diamond hands, and no matter what happens, they'll never sell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think like you mentioned, like it's gonna be at some point this might happen. It might not happen this cycle. We might see another traditional 4-year cycle this cycle, and then next cycle we see that like massive or change in the direction of the cycle. So I think I would agree with you in the sense of that. I think eventually something will happen. Like it's not going to be repeating forever. At some point, everything, could change, or it will change, because it all depends on this key moment that you referred to earlier, which is when will someone or some country decide to use this secret weapon, which is just, printing unlimited amounts of money to buy Bitcoin. Like whenever someone does that, and when like it's a move that they all have, but they've not been doing it. They've been inflating and devaluing their currency, but this inflation was going to other places, whether it's spending or military or whatever. Whenever someone's going to direct this spending or inflation that they're creating towards this thing, which is buying Bitcoin, then we might see this phase where some people expect some a FOMO in terms of nations getting into the space.
Absolutely. And you think about it, any nation, as you said, any nation has this power. They can print their fake money to buy a real money. And whoever does it first, they win. And what's going to happen is, in my mind, and only time will tell, whoever pulls that money printing trigger first, whoever does that first, then the race begins. And we think that we've seen big moves with just us in the markets. But wait till governments are in the markets. And whoever goes first, it's not just one government in the market. Now, we can see El Salvador has been stockpiling Bitcoin, but they don't have their own money. That is, there's no El Salvadorian dollar per se. They use the US dollar, so they can't print that currency. They can borrow that currency and get into a lot of debt, as they are with the IMF. But it looks like they're going to pay off that debt very quickly because of what they've done with Bitcoin. But for every other nation who's just printing money, they pull the trigger, they start buying Bitcoin, then all the other nations go, and then you're going to have this seesaw effect, Mohamed, where the purchasing power of fiat is going to collapse through the floor, and the purchasing power of Bitcoin is going to go past the moon on its way to Mars. And it could happen much quicker than we realize. It'll be like a dam breaking. You'll see this big wall of concrete and a little wet spot, and then a little trickle, and then bang, the whole dam collapses. And that tsunami of water flowing into these markets, in my mind, is governments printing all of their worthless money to buy the real money. And this transition could be much quicker than we realize. And then you could basically, one of the viewers on my channel, he's very good at technical analysis, and he gives this analogy. He said, as soon as that happens, I'm going to take the Bitcoin charts and just throw it in the bin, because it's not going to mean anything. Technicals won't mean anything at that stage. It'll all be fundamentals. And the fundamentals will be money printer has just gone brr. Everyone's doing it, and everyone wants to buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin goes through the roof and fiat collapses. So the advice, unofficially, I could give to everyone is you probably want just a little bit of Bitcoin, just in case. If this really happens, it's probably a good idea just to get a bit. And I think most nations, most individuals, most institutions, and most banks are now realizing, even if they don't like Bitcoin, you probably better get a little bit just in case. If you look at the advancement of all nations, you might say, well, I don't like the internet. Too bad, everyone's using the internet. You might say, well, I don't like automobiles. It's like, well, you kind of got to use them, otherwise you're not going to keep up with the world. We can see this throughout history. When electricity was invented and first used, people were terrified of it because they thought it was going to burn down houses. When the automobile came out, they didn't want to use it because it was too smoky and it was going to take away the horse and cart. And we've seen this over and over again with the printing press, with the television, with the everything, with telephone, any piece of technology that's so groundbreaking. At first, there's so much resistance. And then it doesn't matter if you resist it or not. You have to adopt it because everyone around you, particularly your competitor, they are using it. Therefore, you have to use it. Thus, Bitcoin will be no different.
Yeah, Yeah, I think we're on this path right now where we're seeing this initial stage of where institutions are having to buy just to not miss out, just to start. And is slowly that like escalates itself into having higher prices, and higher prices brings in more people. And, it's kind of feels in some way like it's like an inevitable kind of situation that we're in. It's just gonna need time, and it's gonna need for the right pieces to fall in the right places, and no one knows how quickly this could happen. Like you mentioned, like whenever we get to a certain stage, things can just snowball and happen really fast after that. So that will be very exciting to watch. And since we're talking about nation states and institutions, we can move on and talk a little bit about the economic situation that we're seeing right now. So in the past few years, we've seen some let's say like not really good economic situation in terms of the US and the global environment. We've seen inflation go up, and in response, the central banks had to hike rates, and recently they've been starting to reduce rates. But until now, a lot of people are still having some fears when it comes to the economy, when it comes to the state of things moving into 2025. So how would you describe the current states, and whether or not is there anything that is scary to you in that way, or bad, or anything like that?
Yeah, so let's touch with inflation first. So what's concerning to me, what's I guess scary to me, is that many people don't understand what inflation is. So let's just go to the basics first, and then we'll look at the opportunity that lays ahead. Inflation is not the inflation of prices. People think that prices going up is inflation. No, prices going up is a consequence of inflation. Inflation is the inflation of the money supply. That is, we only had so many dollars, so we'll stick with the United States. We talk about the United States because they are the biggest economy. They have the world currency, the global currency, and what happens in America affects the rest of the world. But I emphasize all nations that print money are dealing with the same situation. But we focus on America for those reasons. The biggest economy, the global reserve currency, the biggest economy that affects all other nations around the world. So I'm glad you brought up this chart. So this is the M2 money supplied seen from Fred. And what they've actually done, Mohamed, is they've actually stopped reporting on this data, because not even the United States government knows how much money they do or don't have. That is, they have printed so much money that they've lost track of how much money there is. And this creates countless problems. First of all, when it's unclear of what the money supply is and what the future of money will be, it's very difficult to plan a business or a nation with those uncertainties. Bitcoin's the opposite. We know how many Bitcoin there are. We know what the supply is. We know what the circulating supply and total supply will be. That is, the total supply or maximum supply is 21 million coins. At the moment, we've got about 19.6 million coins circulating around the economy. And we know the release rate of the remaining 1.5 million Bitcoin, approximately, into the economy. Therefore, Bitcoin becomes very predictable, whilst the US dollar becomes very unpredictable. When they keep printing money, printing and printing, what that's doing is it's actually stealing from everyone who uses that money. So whether it's the United States themselves or any other nation that uses the United States dollar, when the United States, through the Federal Reserve or fractional reserve lending, prints more money, what it's actually doing is it's taking away, essentially stealing, purchasing power from every single person, every single institution, every single government that holds or uses the US dollar. Now, consequently, that's why we see prices go up. Prices are going up because what you're purchasing the bottle of water with, as an example, it's not that the bottle of water is more valuable. It's that the dollar that you're buying that bottle of water with is less valuable. It has less power, less purchasing power. And now that people are waking up to this, we've been dealing with inflation for a long time. That is, The money supply has always been inflating and prices have always been going up. But the so-called natural rate of inflation is about 2 to 5% per year. That means every year the money supply inflates, gets bigger by 2 to 5% per year. But what's also happening is, keeping all things consistent, that means that you are losing 2 to 5% of your purchasing power every year. That means that you had $100 in the bank at the beginning of the year, and at the end of the year, although it still says $100, the purchasing power, the real value, is only $95 to $98. Well, what's happened is, of course, over recent years, particularly with the pandemic, with COVID, instead of it going from 2 to 5% printing money every year, some estimates say it went up to 40%. Now, governments will never admit this. They say, well, maybe it was 8%, maybe it was 6%. But the real proof, my friend, is for all of us trying to live. We can see that electricity went up. We can see that fuel went up. We can see that food went up. And more importantly, we can feel that it went up because it costs so much money to buy these same products. The product is the same. The production of that product is in fact more efficient. But for some reason, we need more money to buy the same product, which is now produced more efficiently. And the reason why we need more money is because governments keep printing this money. And what's concerning to me, Mohamed, is when they turn around, governments, either side, left or right, and they blame us. They say, hey, it's your fault, citizens, because you bought too many clothes. You bought that new car. You went on a holiday. And because you bought so much stuff, prices have gone up and inflation has gone up. Well, that is economically and mathematically completely false. Me buying a loaf of bread doesn't put prices up. In fact, if I buy lots of loaves of bread and lots of other people buy lots of loaves of bread, it creates more efficiency, more competition. So keeping all things consistent, that would in fact lead to prices going down. More competitors who make bread would come into the market. There would be more efficient systems that make bread. There would be better production of bread. There'd be more competitors trying to undercut other competitors. Therefore, what would actually happen, if lots of people were buying lots and lots of bread, the price wouldn't go up, it would actually go down. But because we're not taught about money, when the price of bread goes up, we're blamed for it. We are blamed by the government saying it's your fault that you're spending too much money. So to punish you, it just sounds absurd when I explain it. So to punish you for buying so much bread, we're now going to put the interest rates up on your house. So now you're going to pay more for bread and you're going to pay more for your home loan. And of course, this is where people are in a world of hurt. And they're like, well, hang on a second. I didn't print the money and I didn't realize buying a loaf of bread was a bad thing to do. And the reality is, of course, if we stop buying bread or we stop going to the restaurant, well, what happens then? The bread company collapses because no one's buying their product. The restaurants close because no one's going there to buy their food. And then what actually happens to the economy is the opposite of what we're being accused of when they say you need to stop spending money to bring down inflation. Well, what happens then is all of these businesses collapse. Unemployment goes up, and those who are unemployed, then they go to the government and say, hi, government, I don't have a job. I need food. Can you give me some money to buy food? Well, then what happens? The government then goes, well, okay, we'll print more money to give you more money. And then inflation gets worse and worse. So we are spiraling out of control where things are getting much, much worse because they keep printing money, which dilutes the purchasing power, which puts prices up. And then they put the interest rates up to punish us for them printing money, which leaves people with even less money. So people are becoming desperate. On the individual level, on the institutional level, and on the nation state level, they realize we can't keep playing this game. We need to go for a different money. We need a hard, scarce, immutable, finite money that no one can print, no one can dilute, but everyone can use. And that is why it's very exciting and concerning. It's concerning because people may not understand how fiat works. It's concerning because governments blame us for prices going up when it was the governments who printed the money. But it's exciting because now people are waking up. The work you're doing, Mohammed, by teaching your community, teaching your viewers about, look, this is what we thought money was, but this is actually what money is. This is what we thought inflation was, but this is what inflation really is. And this is what we thought we had to use, but this is the alternatives we have. So what's very exciting for all of us at any level, the individual, the institution, or the nation, is that Bitcoin saves us all, irrespective of our color, our gender, our religion, our nationality. It doesn't matter. Bitcoin is for everyone. So where I'm most excited, my friend, is that it brings us all together as humanity, no matter who we are. We all strive for the same thing. We want to look after our health, wealth, love, and happiness. We want to look after our family. We want to do the right thing by our faith. And we essentially strive to be good people. But where it becomes very difficult is when we don't have money and we can't support our family. We can't support our faith. We can't support ourselves no matter what we do. We become desperate. And that's where you see some bad things happen. On the individual level, maybe it's a theft or a robbery. On the institutional level, maybe it's fractional reserve lending or playing silly buggers on the markets. On the nation state level, it's let's print more money. The foundation to all of these problems is money, is fiat. But beautifully, the solution to all of these problems is a better money. And that better money, my friend, is Bitcoin.
Yes, that's a great breakdown of how things are. And I think just to add, like, one important thing is just like how they also manipulate the numbers. Like if we are speaking about inflation and the current inflation rate is 2.6%, in reality, the inflation from, let's say, just 2020, 2021 till now is over 40-50% if you
Correct.
actually want to see how much prices have increased. So they don't just only do the things that you mentioned, but also they do change the ways that they calculate some of the numbers or present them in order to make them more favorable to the narrative that they're trying to present.
And isn't it ironic that some say that Bitcoin's a scam? It's like, no, that's not the scam. Bitcoin
Yeah.
is the antidote. It is the cure to the scam. And the biggest scam in the history of humanity is fiat, fake money that they print out of nowhere. And I'm glad you mentioned that. They do lie about the numbers. They lie about what the inflation rate is, and they lie by changing what they put in the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. This year, it might be bread, milk, and fuel. But next year, it might be Netflix, your electricity, and an internet connection. So they're not comparing apples with apples. That is, they're not comparing the same thing every year. And both sides of governments are guilty of it. It doesn't matter, left or right. And any nation does the same thing. It doesn't matter which nation is doing it, because they need to basically lie to the people, because if the people knew, they wouldn't tolerate it. There's a famous saying by Henry Ford, the founder of the Ford Motor Company. He goes something along the lines of, if people knew how the monetary system worked, there would surely be riots before morning. And that's why I think all of us around the world, we're not taught about money, because if we knew that our money was being stolen every year, every month, through the money printing, through the fractional reserve lending, the people would rise. They would rise and say, we will not tolerate you stealing our money. But that's what's beautiful about Bitcoin, Mohammed, is that Bitcoin is the peaceful transition. There's no Bitcoin company. There's no Bitcoin government. There's no Bitcoin institution. It is literally a code in a computer, millions of computers, arguably, nodes around the world, even in satellites, and then a decentralized mining or confirmation process that is run by anyone who wants to participate. You don't need a license. You don't need to go to apply to the Bitcoin company. Those things just don't exist. It is purely organic, and that's why it will succeed, because it's not someone, it's not a government, it's not a person, it's not an institution saying you have to use this money or you should use this money. It is in fact something that is given to us by perhaps a higher being that said, here is the solution to the mess that you all face as a humankind. This is the antithesis to the biggest scam in the history of humanity. Who wants to use it? And you can see over time, every day, more and more and more people are using it. And the only people who don't want to use Bitcoin, there's two camps. One, those who don't understand Bitcoin because they don't understand money, they don't really want to use it. Two, those who do understand it, but they understand they will lose their monopoly, their centralized corruption on the old system. So what will happen is those who understand money will say, hang on, I have to use it. But those who do understand Bitcoin but don't want to use it because then they lose the power of printing money, eventually they will have to come around, because no matter how much money they print, it will never, ever be as powerful as Bitcoin in the long run.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. So like in terms of the short-term outlook for the economic environment that we're seeing right now, when it comes to the Fed cutting rates, when it comes to the new Trump administration taking over, will they be able to manage these things? Do you think that, because like for me, like Trump, when you look at his plans, and he says that in some ways he kind of wants to cut spending or lower the budget or, you know, use it more efficiently. But at the same time, a lot of his plans are, you know, very inflation. You know, they're going to require a lot of printing to fund these things, whether it's building factories in the US or bringing manufacturers or whatever he's trying to do. So in terms of the short term going into 2025, do you see there are that the economic situation will be more stable, better? Will they be able to manage the fears that are going on right now in terms of unemployment, inflation, and all these things, or do you think that's going to be an issue?
Great question. Really good question. So both sides of governments, the left and the right, are addicted to printing money because it's free money. Imagine you just have the ability to say, right, I'm going to build a new bridge, print the money. I'm going to build a new aircraft carrier, just print it. You literally are addicted to just printing money. The big shift, I think what would actually happen this time is, yes, there's going to be a lot of money printing, but the difference this time, my friend, is instead of just printing the money to go to war, or printing the money to let countless illegal immigrants come in, or printing the money for perhaps a welfare state, the money printing will continue. But instead of it just going to bombs and bullets and burning fuel and paying for illegal immigration, it will now go to production. And as a consequence of that, instead of the money just being literally or figuratively just burnt or blown up, it's now actually going to be put into creating jobs, creating industry, creating opportunity for the United States. Now, they're going to do this, allegedly, time will tell, whilst concurrently adopting a harder money at a minimum as a reserve, just a strategic reserve. Just as some nations stockpile iron ore, they stockpile fuel or oil, they stockpile coal. The government now has said, well, maybe we should stockpile a bit of this Bitcoin thing, because government stockpile gold as well. So it is a great turning point. It's a great turning point because, for all the hate against Trump, the reality is he's a businessman and he knows money. The other reality is that he loves his country. And then, of course, he's got children who are adults and very financially literate, and they understand the power of Bitcoin. So you're going to see, I'm very excited, you're going to see this beautiful transition of, instead of just printing money to fund wars in other nations and pay for illegal immigrants coming into your nation, you're going to have a shift, in my opinion. The opinion is, instead of printing money to go blow up people in another nation, how about we print money to create jobs in our nation? Instead of printing money to fund other people illegally coming into our borders, how about we print money to create opportunities and homes for our own people? And I think any nation who turns their back on that outlook is probably questionable in their intent. I think what Trump is doing is a very good thing. I think he will still print a lot of money, but it's just that what that money will be used for is very different. And what is also very different is that we've never, ever had any government, left or right, anywhere, with the exception of El Salvador and perhaps not Burma,
Bhutan.
Bhutan. Thank you, my friend. Bhutan. Yes, you read my mind. Beyond those two nations primarily, and even Venezuela to an extent. You can see some underground use of Bitcoin there. You now have a global power for the first time in history saying, we're actually going to take this thing seriously. We're legislating it. We're creating clear frameworks around it. We're bringing it into the center of our government that is in reserves. We're bringing it into the center of our nation when it comes to mining and clarity with the legal framework. So I'm very excited for the future of the United States, and consequently, I'm excited for the future of the world.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to talk about this. And we can, like, what opportunity would this bring to other nations that are currently thinking or maybe considering doing some of these moves that El Salvador is doing? We can talk a little bit, because I know you've lived in a few different places. You've had a lot of international experience, and you've also been in the Middle East and all that. So what opportunity does that bring to these third world, sometimes, countries, these other regions which are currently not the most dominating in terms of the world stage? How does Bitcoin and getting into crypto change the dynamic in that way?
In one word, freedom. It gives them freedom from the consequences of a centralized global currency that is printed without limit. That is, you have one nation in this instance that prints fake unlimited money to buy real, hard, sound goods. And a lot of the world is waking up to this. They're saying, well, hang on a second. I have to plow the fields or build cars or make electronics and use real labor, real resources, real technology, real energy, and real effort. And in return, I get a fake money. Why am I doing this? And everyone's waking up to this. Now, equally, what's happening is you can see when there's sanctions put on you, because remember, money must be neutral. And what we saw with Russia, when sanctions were put on Russia, it showed that, now, whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. What it showed the world was when America put sanctions on Russia and said, we're cutting you out of the SWIFT network and we're confiscating your money from the oligarchs and the banks and your assets, it actually showed other nations, oh, it's kind of dangerous using the US dollar, because if I use the US dollar, then at any time, if I do anything that upsets the United States, there's no court case, there's no discussion. They just rob my bank accounts and cut me out of the global network. I have to use a different system. So as we are a global community, we are a global village, and we work together. That's why money must be neutral, and it must be borderless, so we can all participate in this global community. It's not fair, it's not reasonable if one nation, any nation, had the power to confiscate, seize, or block your money if you did something that they didn't like. Equally, it's not fair when any nation produces real goods for fake money. So for all of us out here, including the United States, there's great opportunity to free ourselves from fake money. It's an opportunity to free ourselves from endless climbing inflation. And more importantly, it's potentially an opportunity to break down a lot of wars, that is, stop a lot of conflict around the world. War costs money. And when you can print money to go to war, you're more likely to go to war. When you can't print money to go to war and you have to use hard assets like gold or Bitcoin, you're more likely to avoid war. So beyond bringing us all out of poverty, beyond taking away the pain and the headache of inflation, and beyond this fear of being cut out of the financial system if we upset the United States, what we can do as one humanity, as one humankind, is we can in fact move from a money of war to a money of peace. And no matter who we are, wherever we are in the world, that's something that gives me the most excitement, adopting a money of peace. And the consequence of adopting that money of peace is not only less war, less violence, less death, but more wealth, more health, more love, and more happiness.
Yes, I think that's a great explanation. And I think You know, since we're running out of time, we've been having a great conversation so far. Let's get back into crypto for a little bit. Let's wrap up with a little talk about Bitcoin in terms of price and also some of the altcoin and altcoins in general, since a lot of my audience would be most interested in that. I don't know if you're able to give us any TA, because I like your TA that you provide, if you are able to share your screen, and we can take a look at Bitcoin's performance, and also if you can tell us about Bitcoin dominance, and when would that be going down? When should we be expecting to see an alt season? And more importantly, maybe the second part of the question would be in terms of the narratives that we've been seeing. So this cycle so far, we've seen that most of the not traditional, but like the more known narratives, like, you know, the L1s and all of those other big narratives haven't been performing as much, and we've seen more of a random, you know, pumps here and there, memes going off, and, you know, certain things doing well. But most of the other coins, that the big coins that people have been getting into for a long time, haven't really performed yet. So I just wanted your opinion in terms of the overall when it comes to altcoins and Bitcoin as well.
So you can see the Bitcoin. So at time of recording, and by the time this goes out, the price will change. So I always have to say at time of recording, Bitcoin is currently at $96,771. And it has a dominance of 50.
Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah. Share screen. 1 second.
We're not seeing it. Okay, there we go.
So I like to look at, this is called a heat map. And apologies if I'm explaining what you already know. So this is a good visualization of all the money in crypto. And we can see that each square represents one of the coins out there. And the biggest square, proportionately in this entire map, is Bitcoin, with Bitcoin at $96,788. Now we talk about this dominance down here of 55.56% dominance. That means of the roughly $3 trillion in crypto, 55% of it is just in Bitcoin. Now, what will happen, Mohamed, is over time is that this dominance down here of 55.54% in Bitcoin, that dominance will actually drop to around 30%. And I emphasize that's not Bitcoin getting smaller. That's the altcoin market getting bigger. So Bitcoin will still get much bigger in price and in market cap, but so will all the other altcoins. And this is quite normal in the 4-year cycle that we've been talking about. So where I'm really excited is to see how high Bitcoin will go, of course. But the reality is, if we want to talk about return on investment, that is, what's going to give you the best return on your money? Well, no one can be entirely sure. But I must emphasize to the viewers, don't focus only on the profits. You must focus on the risk. That is, many people, when they go into meme coins, some of the most money made is on meme coins, where Bonk, as an example, I think from memory, Bonk did originally, and I reported on this when it happened, it did about 13,500%, 13,500% in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, 13,500%. So many people say, well, what's the next bonk? I want to buy that coin. And it's like, yeah, the 13,500% sounds great, but it was 13,500 times more risky than Bitcoin. So there was a much higher probability that you were going to lose your money, and you will lose your money investing in meme coins. So when it comes to what's happening out there, I've made a video called the 3-coin theory, and there is an argument that I made up that perhaps in the future there will always be lots of coins, just like there's lots of internet companies. So you think of, there's lots of internet websites, but you've kind of got the big ones: Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google. What's another one that's pretty big out there? Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google.
Tesla. All right.
As a website, maybe eBay when that first came out, that was one
Yeah.
of the big websites. Now, that doesn't mean that there's
Yeah.
not lots of websites that didn't work, but you have the main websites, the big ones.
Mhm.
And what we're looking for in crypto is we're looking for the equivalent of what are going to be the big cryptos. What are the big cryptos that are going to be the future of the internet of value? We know on the internet of information, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, they're the big ones on the internet of information. But what about on the internet of value? And on the internet of value, we think, in my concept of the three coin theory, maybe, and I don't know, but maybe it's going to be Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. So some say that they will be the big three dominators. But of course, there's a lot of competition to Ethereum with Cardano and even Solana. But then, my friend, things get crazy when you have, to be blunt with you, silly meme coins like Dogecoin or Pepe or Bonk, which are coined, or Dog with Hat, which is nothing more than essentially a picture of a dog wearing a hat that is worth so much money. It's got very little development on it. It doesn't really do anything, but it doesn't matter. The market loves it. So when it comes to making money, I think we need to focus on risk versus reward. We need to focus on the reality that Bitcoin is the best performing asset in the history of humanity. And we need to understand that Bitcoin, although it's not without risk, it has much less risk than many of the other coins out there. So my approach to these markets, Mohamed, is I put the majority of my money into Bitcoin, but then I dabble. I play the markets by having some risk in some of the other coins. Like my main two coins are Bitcoin and Ethereum, but then I risk a little bit more in Cardano, BNB, XRP, and Solana. And then I have a smaller portion that I roll the dice, almost like a crypto casino, at some of the other coins out there, the Pepes, the Doge, the Shiba Inus, the H-bar, the Taos. If they come up, they make me a lot of money. And essentially, I've made a lot of money doing that. But what I do then is I pay my taxes, and then I go and buy more Bitcoin. There's many different strategies where some people will say, no, only buy Bitcoin, or only buy this coin, or only buy that coin. Different people have different opinions. Different people have different budgets and different risk tolerances. I've been very successful in these markets. These markets have changed my life forever. And the good news is there's still a lot more opportunities in these markets. For me, Bitcoin is the number. If I could only buy one coin, it would be Bitcoin. There's no question whatsoever. But because I can buy other coins, I don't discriminate against profits. And I dabble in the rest of the markets, knowing that some of my investments will fail, and that's okay. That's part of the game. Just as some of my stocks on the traditional stock exchange fail, that's all right. Overall, you want to reduce your risk and maximize your profit. By doing that, I put the majority of my money in Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I roll the dice at some of the other coins, and that has paid off very well for me. I think the best returning coin I've ever had is Dogecoin. I bought Dogecoin in, I think, 2016, a lot of it, and made a lot of money many years later. I made a lot of money in Theta. I've made a lot of money in Bitcoin, but I haven't sold Bitcoin. I've made a lot of money in Ethereum. But equally, to be fair, I've lost money in some of the coins that never went anywhere. So please, for all of the viewers out there, don't get greedy, be patient, do your research, listen to people like Mohamed, calculate your risk, and enjoy the ride.
Awesome. Great, man. What an amazing conversation that we've had. And I think the most important thing to highlight from that final segment is the importance of risk management, understanding the risk that you're taking when you're investing in whatever coin that you're getting into. So I see you sharing the Bitcoin chart. Did you want to mention anything about it?
Yeah, I think I just want to touch on this. So we're looking at Bitcoin to US dollars in 1 daily candles. And there's one, so this blue channel here, this is what we were bouncing around in for months. And Bitcoin was boring. This is where Bitcoin was boring. But for me, it was a good time to accumulate some Bitcoin. These white horizontal lines, these were the all-time highs that we hit all the way back from the first one was in March. Then we hit the next one that was very exciting on the 13th of November, and then we had another all-time high on the 22nd of November. And if I zoom in a little bit here, you can see we are not far away from breaking a new all-time high, the psychological barrier of $100,000. The question, my friend, is some people say that when we cross the psychological barrier of $100,000, and it is a big barrier because markets are made up of people are made up of emotions, and people like the emotional connection to round numbers. I remember when Bitcoin crossed 1,000. Then I remember when it crossed 10,000. And now I'm going to be part of Bitcoin crossing $100,000. There is potential that when we cross the $100,000 mark, that many people sell their position and the market drops down because it's like, right, it got to $100,000. I'm taking the profits. But concurrently, there's another argument that when we cross the $100,000 barrier, it goes on all the news, all the mainstream, FOMO kicks in, the fear of missing out, and everyone comes flooding into these markets and buying lots of crypto. I'm more inclined to think the latter. I think that once we hit the $100,000 mark, I think this sell-off right here, I'll just draw it up. I think this sell-off right here that went down to here, I think that was the psychological of we hit $100,000 and many people dumped their position. But guess what? The market just scooped it up straight away. One trend line that I've been playing with, this orange trend line here, we've got confirmation on this trend line. So when we look at trend lines, we talk about data points. And this is one data point here where this is where it started, 1 and 2. So very simple TA here. We're just keeping it very basic. 2 points establishes a trend, but 3 points confirms that trend. And that third point was this one here. Now, panning out, you can see that this trend line was very aggressive. You say, wow, that's a really aggressive trend line. That there's no way Bitcoin is going to go up that aggressively. It's too aggressive. Well, guess what, my friend? We are above that trend line. We are more aggressive than that trend line. We've in fact got another trend line that looks like that. So what does it mean? No matter which trend line we want to look at, whether it's this one or this one, my friend, it's up and to the right. It's exciting times. I can't wait.
Yeah. I think it's very exciting, the time that we're seeing right now. And we're very close to this huge threshold of breaking that 100K mark and getting into this next phase of the bull market. And just to confirm, one of the things that you mentioned, which is here you can see Bitcoin long-term holders and US spot ETF balances. You can see that the long-term holders in Bitcoin, this was last week, so a few days ago. So you can see that they're the ones, the people who've been buying Bitcoin for at least more than 6 months or 1 year. They've been selling a little bit of their positions, and the ETFs have been accumulating during that time. So we've had a lot of people who got into this space, let's say in 2022, 2023, they bought at around 20K, let's say. They are taking their up a significant amount. They're up 4x or something or more. So those are the people that have been selling recently, and it would make more sense when we look at your chart and what you were mentioning earlier.
That was good data that you brought up. So yes, those who, and it's okay. It's the free market. As you said, they bought it around 20 grand. They've done 4 to 5x. They've taken some profits off the table. That's cool. It's the free market. But as you also showed on that chart, that was good data that you had. Basically, the ETFs, the big boys, they know what's going on, and they're like, I'll take that. And that's what we can see right here. What you just showed right there is we got to the $100,000 mark nearly, and it was close enough. It was 99,334. And many people are like, you know what? That's close enough. I'll take the profit. I wanted 100 grand. Yeah. I'll take it before other people did it. And that was that big sell-off that happened down here. Sell, 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 sell. But then the buying pressure, my friend, was too great. The buying pressure was too much, and everyone just goes, I'll take that. I'll take that, including me. And lots of, not only the ETF managers, but also the individuals. And think of even Michael Saylor. He bought this thing up. So we're just going to continue tracking.
5,500 Bitcoin at, I think, 98.
That's
98,000.
right. And that's right.
That's
He bought it at pretty much the top. He bought it around, I do a
yeah.
horizontal rate. He bought it around there, right
Hmm.
here. But he doesn't care. He's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, I'll take that. No problem.
And he's gonna keep on buying. He already
That's right.
announced the 3-year plan where they're gonna buy. I think I don't know how many billions, but billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin.
He could potentially be the richest man on planet Earth, or certainly his company.
Yeah,
There,
yeah. If
it
if
could
his
absolutely happen.
if his price predictions play out where he's expecting Bitcoin to be, I think over $1 million or something in 2035, or I don't know what his exact time frame is, but if any of those scenarios happen, he's definitely gonna be worth more than the GDP of like a couple of big nations. You're talking about an entire region of nations. He's going to be worth more than these countries himself.
Absolutely. What I've brought up now, my friend, is I know we've got to finish shortly, but I just want to show the world this. This is very interesting. So this is the market caps of the biggest any markets on the planet. Now, Bitcoin is the 7th biggest market cap. Just quickly, the biggest market cap is gold at 18.38 trillion. Then it drops down to Apple, which just flipped Nvidia. It used to be Nvidia, but Apple's now come up to the number 2 position. And it's a big delta. Gold is 18 trillion, but then Apple drops all the way down to 3 trillion. But it goes gold, Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet or Google, and then Bitcoin. So we are the 7th biggest market cap on planet Earth, and we've done that in less than 15 years. We are bigger than any bank in the world. We are bigger than any oil producing company in the world. We are bigger than any car brand or manufacturer in the world. We are bigger than any pharmaceutical company. And we are not far away from being bigger than Google. Google has a market cap of 2.08 trillion, and Bitcoin at time of recording has a market cap of 1.916 trillion. So why I show this is because if anyone who says Bitcoin's not real, well, numbers don't lie. This is one of it is the 7th biggest market cap of anything in any industry anywhere in the world. And I get excited when I see this because mark my words, my friend, this bull run, we could end up as number 2. All we have to do is another 50% from here, and we are bigger than Apple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's extremely possible. Like, it's not far at all, considering the part of the bull market that we're in right now, the amount of time that we have left, and like the run up that we've seen so far is already significant. Like, we've already crossed a lot of like important thresholds when it comes to price, the 80K, the 90K. We've crossed those. So now I think once we cross the 100K, the next move will be much larger. Like, we're gonna see more significant moves happen. And just to share here, this is my total crypto market cap prediction, or like estimate of where I think things could go. And you can see this pennant here that's like from all the way back to the past cycle, 2017 here. And you can see how we're going in this direction. And for me personally, I think that we might be seeing at least 7 trillion in terms of the entire market cap, and between 7 and 11. So if we get to this like 8, 9, that's where you'll see Bitcoin go into this number 2 position. Even with a 40% or so dominance, you'd still see Bitcoin be number 2. But I think that's like where I see us going during the next year, like specifically by the end of 2025, or from June.
I think that's a fair estimate. That makes us way bigger than Apple, as you said, the 2nd biggest market cap on the planet. And perhaps, as I said, gold has a market cap of 18 trillion, but imagine 10% comes out of gold and goes into Bitcoin. It's that seesaw effect. The gold market cap.
And we've already
goes
seen
down.
gold top out in some ways. We've seen gold hit its all-time high last month, and it's been going down significantly since then. So you can see that here in approximately October. Yeah, so October we've seen this all-time high for gold, where after that it's been just going sideways and going down more than it's going up. So I think that the next phase where we're gonna see this liquidity coming into the market in 2025, some of it will be from people just like leaving gold and going into Bitcoin, because a lot of the things changed in terms of the economy, in terms of the tension that was happening. And now if Trump wins, a lot of people like to buy gold when these tensions exist in terms of like conflicts and stuff. And I heard you also mention how your prediction for war kind of is like going down in terms of
Yes.
how likely it is to occur. So that all kind of works together for us to say that it's likely for a lot of people to start going from gold into Bitcoin in the future.
I'm impressed that you recognize that, because the market agreed with my sentiment that, as you said, when war comes, a lot of people stockpile their money into gold. And then when we saw Trump got in and I said the likelihood of war has now gone down, I'm just one person, but clearly the market agreed with me, because that's right. People started letting go of their gold positions because people are like, yeah, I feel a little bit more comfortable now. Let's pray we don't have war.
Yeah, hopefully. Very exciting conversation that we've had so far. I'm really happy that you joined me today. I'd love for us to have this conversation once again in the future, after a lot of what we said might be playing out. We can take a look back at what we've said today, since we covered a lot of different topics, and it's been really an interesting conversation.
Shukran, my brother.
Afwan. Thank you, and have a good day, and we'll see you guys later.